Hi, my name is Jennifer Simpson, and I'm the Provost and Vice President Academic at Ryerson University. I'm really glad to be here today for Remembrance Day, and will offer a land acknowledgement and then a few remarks. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Indigenous peoples and nations, Europeans, and all newcomers are invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Three things come to mind for me when I think about this land acknowledgement and what's important. The first thing is the importance of systemic change and attention to ongoing forms of colonialism. Second, it really reminds me of the value of reflection and learning that's ongoing in my life around a range of issues, and an openness to seeing things differently and to knowing differently. And finally, the third item that this land acknowledgement raises for me is the importance of, in my role as provost, to think about equity institutionally and in different settings. Remembrance Day gives us an opportunity to think about and honor over 2.3 million Canadians who made the choice to serve in times of peace, war, and conflict. And when I reflect on what those people were thinking when they made that choice, I have to imagine that they were thinking about the future and the kind of future that they wanted to inhabit. A large part of the role of universities, in my mind, is to think about and put into action the practices of living together well. As I think the questions that were on the minds of those people who decided to serve. What does it mean to live together well? Ryerson has a strong commitment to these questions and changes that will get us there. One example of that commitment right now is Ryerson's willingness to change its name and engage in that process. Very soon there will be multiple opportunities for people to provide input. What that change represents, Ryerson's commitment to that name change, is that the university has listened to people who told the Standing Strong Task Force that the name represented experiences of harm. For me, thinking about change and the value of equity invites us to both name and imagine. Naming allows us to talk about what is, to talk about what we're excited about, what we feel good about, the parts of our communities that we can't wait to revisit and see again. Naming also allows us to pay attention to what's wrong, to what doesn't feel right, and to instances where institutions may not be serving communities equitably. Naming requires us to listen to each other and to disagree well, and then to return to the table to continue listening and thinking about change. The next step in that process is imagining. And I imagine that's what some of those people who decided to serve Canada were doing, that we're honoring today. To imagine a different kind of future together. And so as I close, I'm glad to ask, what is the future that we want to inhabit together? And what are your contributions going to be to getting us there? Thanks very much.
Wache, Dishna Hassan, Sahakutam, the Kashishan Ishku, my Hikando Dam, Omashkiko. I just said that my spirit name is Shadowhawk Woman. I'm Omashkiko, which is Swampy Cree from Attawapaskat, and I'm Wolf Clan. Thank you for this opportunity to come and speak on National Veterans Day. But what I'd like to speak to you here today is about National Aboriginal Veterans Day, which was held on November 8th. And it's a day of remembrance and commemoration of the contributions of Indigenous veterans in the First and Second World Wars, as well as the Korean War. These Aboriginal veterans, we would like to express our gratitude for the contributions Indigenous veterans have made to Canada and the world. National Aboriginal Veterans Day began in Winnipeg in 1994, when Indigenous veterans were not recognized in Remembrance Day activities, and is now celebrated in many communities across Canada. Over 12,000 Indigenous people were estimated to have volunteered in all 3 wars, including 7,000 First Nation members, and approximately 300 died during these conflicts. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people were not eligible for conscription because they were not citizens of Canada. They were also unable to vote. But many volunteered despite the challenges they faced, including traveling long distance from remote communities to enlist, learning a new language, English, and coping with racism against them. Indigenous people were not allowed to join the armed forces until 1942, and the Canadian Navy until 1943. Both men and women enlisted, serving as soldiers, nurses, and in other roles. Many served with distinction, winning medals for bravery in action. After the war, enlisted Indigenous people returned home to continued discrimination, including in some cases denial of benefits, such as a loss of Indian status and exploitation of their land by the government for non-Indigenous veterans. It was only in 1995 that the Indigenous veterans were allowed to lay wreaths commemorating their fallen comrades at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. The first monument commemorating the role of Indigenous people during these 3 world wars was dedicated in 2001 in Ottawa. It took until 2003 for the Government of Canada to provide veterans with benefits to First Nation soldiers who had been denied them in the past. The Métis veterans have not received them. Today, Indigenous people continue to serve in Canada's armed forces. Our Indigenous people of this land has faced many horrible things that have happened to them, and still our hearts are in the right place. We believe in this country. We believe in the rights for all people to live free. And I ask that you take a moment and remember all of those. And to all of the Indigenous people listening to this, we thank your ancestors. I thank my ancestors for what they did for us, and the next 7 generations thank them as well. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.
"100 years ago, an inspiring woman had a vision, a bright red poppy to honor veterans who lost their lives in the First World War, and to help raise support funds to help others in the aftermath."
The idea was conceived by Madame Anna Guérin of France, sparked by John McCrae's poem In Flanders Fields. Anna had originally founded a charity to help rebuild war-torn regions of France after the First World War.
Poppies made of fabric were sold to help her charity. She presented the concept to France's allies, including the Great War Veterans Association in Canada, which later became the Royal Canadian Legion. The idea was adopted, and the poppy symbol made its first appearance in Canada on July 6, 1921, the year of the first poppy campaign to support our veterans. To mark the symbol's 100th anniversary in 2021, the Royal Canadian Legion produced a replica of the original fabric pin.
The familiar image has come to reflect the sacrifices of fallen Canadian veterans from all arms of the military and from all missions, including 2 world wars, Korea, Afghanistan, Bosnia, peacekeeping duties, and other assignments.
Canada's Parliament entrusted the Legion with the exclusive right to use the poppy as the nation's symbol of remembrance and to safeguard its image, a pledge it honors today.
100 years later, the symbol is unmistakable. Its meaning still deep.
The poppy of remembrance honors sacrifice. The poppy of remembrance cries, "Never again." The poppy of remembrance reflects solace and support.
Anna Guérin's vision lives on.
please wear a poppy?" the lady said, and held one forth, but I shook my head. Then I stopped and watched as she offered them there, and her face was old and lined with care. But beneath the scars the years had made, there remained a smile that refused to fade. A boy came whistling down the street, bouncing along on carefree feet. His smile was full of joy and fun. "Lady," said he, "may I have one?" When she'd pinned it on, he turned to say, "Why do we wear a poppy today?" The lady smiled in her wistful way and answered, "This is Remembrance Day. And the poppy there is a symbol for the gallant men who died in war. And because they did, you and I are free. That's why we wear a poppy, you see." I had a boy about your size, with golden hair and big blue eyes. He loved to play and jump and shout. Free as a bird, he would race about. As the years went by, he learned and grew and became a man, as you will too. He was fine and strong, with a boyish smile, but he'd seemed with us such a little while. When war broke out and he went away, I still remember his face that day, when he smiled at me and said, "Goodbye, I'll be back soon, Mum. Please, don't cry." But the war went on and he had to stay, and all I could do was wait and pray. His letters told of the awful fight. I can still see it in my dreams at night, with the tanks and guns and cruel barbed wire, and the mines and bullets, the bombs and fire. Till at last, the war was won. And that's why we wear a poppy, son. The small boy turned as if to go, then said, "Thanks, lady, I'm glad to know. That sure did sound like an awful fight, but your son, did he come back all right?" A tear rolled down each faded cheek. She shook her head, but didn't speak. I slunk away in a sort of shame, and if you were me, you'd have done the same. For our thanks in giving, if oft delayed, though our freedom was bought and thousands paid. And so, when we see a poppy worn, let us reflect on the burden borne by those who gave their very call, their very all, when asked to answer their country's call, that we at home in peace might live. Then wear a poppy, remember, and give.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Black Canada and the Great War is a SSHRC-funded research project led by Dr. Hyacinth Simpson, Associate Professor in the English Department. The project's research findings are being presented directly to Canadians through a series of public-facing events and publications, including webinars, symposia, a YouTube channel, and newspaper articles. The Black Canada and the Great War Project focuses on recovering the stories of the estimated 2,000 Black men who served in the Canadian Expeditionary Force during the First World War. The project also recovers the stories of Black women and men who supported domestic war efforts on the home front, even as they endured and challenged explicit acts of anti-Black racism and more subtle expressions of racial bias in the military and the wider Canadian society. In March 2021, the federal government announced its intent to apologize for the military's treatment of more than 600 Black men who served in the segregated No. 2 Construction Battalion. As a result, more Canadians have become aware that Black men served in the Canadian Expeditionary Force. Still, in annual Remembrance Day events, the recovered histories of war and heroic sacrifice shown in the media largely exclude Black people's experiences of and their contributions to the First World War on Canada's behalf.
As we close this ceremony today, I would like to add my deepest gratitude to those who serve their country. I ask that we especially remember those whose sacrifice is often not recognized. The people who heal the wounded, the nurses and doctors, and those who help them, often in the front lines. We are grateful for the sacrifice of all Canadians from all backgrounds. We are grateful also to live in a country which is free of war. That freedom brings with it an obligation to bridge the divides among nations and to address the circumstances that cause conflict and war. On this day of remembrance, our call to action is to be agents of peace. There will be no greater tribute to those who have given their lives for our country and our freedom. Thank you.